and welcome to Budget with Business Standard. I'm Nivedita Mukherjee. We've heard and read a lot about budget already, but today we have a strong panel to talk about budget 2022-23. And so we begin with Aditi Phadnis. Aditi is the political editor of Business Standard, and she can talk freely about anything that goes on in politics and much else. Then we have Pranjal Sharma, who is an economic analyst and author, and is an expert on anything related to technology. Then we have Puneet Wadhwa, who is a senior associate editor at Business Standard and is an expert on markets. So hello everyone, welcome to the show. And we'll start with Aditi. My question to you would be, do you see it as an election budget or no? There's been so much confusion around it.
Thank you, Nivedita. It's a pleasure to be here on the show for the best newspaper on the planet. I think this is certainly an election budget, but it's not overtly election oriented. Partly because I think they want to take a broader view of politics as it happens, not just related to elections. And I mean, the obvious reason, of course, is that there is a model code of conduct in place, and anything that is directly a direct allurement to voters will be struck down by the Election Commission. But that said, in this budget, there is a lot that will motivate the voters and will motivate state governments and will tell people in rural areas that there is someone out there who is looking out for you, who is looking after your interests, and will make sure that things don't go completely south for you, even though there is a pandemic in place. I think that is the broad message. A sense of social security, a sense of the fact that the government is looking after you. That said, there are one or two things about the budget which confuse me, and I'm sure the others on the panel will be able to clarify this. One is that both fertilizer and food subsidy have seen drastic cuts. Now, you could say that free food is going to continue at least till March 2022, maybe beyond. But the contradiction between food subsidy being cut and the fact that the FCI has done record procurement, which the budget itself says, and has done, our silos with grain are bursting at the seams. This contradiction doesn't sit well, and I'm sure that that political parties in the opposition will seize upon this.
Aditi, coming back to the election issue, I just wanted to know, do you see it as a 2022 election budget or a 2024 election budget? That question is also being asked, since there are so many long-term issues which have, which have been proposed in this budget.
Certainly, and I see it as a 2024 election budget rather than 2022. We are in the middle of campaigning now for the assembly elections, and I think the emphasis is on what the state governments have done to sell whichever party is in power rather than the central government.
Yes, thanks, Aditi. Pranjal, what do you think? Is it an election budget or no?
See, I think every budget and every economic announcement is ultimately meant for the politics of it, right? Because a government which is elected has to fulfill the aspirations of those who have voted them in. Managing the economy well, ensuring growth, jobs, etc., is part of a political mandate as well. So I don't know how to separate the two, because every decision of a government is ultimately can be interpreted, as a political decision as well, and vice versa. But I think what is interesting in this budget is that, usually you see a bunch of new schemes, and even this government has been, often accused of launching too many schemes, but you didn't see anything new in that sense of new grant programs. What I notice is there is continuity, there is stability, there is government expenditure led investment, which I think is it's prosaic in many ways, but it's also something which is important, because it also gives the impression that the focus has to be on implementation, which is where most governments falter. And even this government, if you look at some of the schemes they've announced in the previous 7 or 8 budgets, some of them are still not taken out. Many have taken out, but some still are, crawling ahead. So from that perspective, I think to answer your question, every budget is a political budget. But what is important, and Nivedita, you and I have looked at budgets for more than 2 decades. Even Aditi has. The fact is that we don't need to have this annual exercise anyway. Most of it is now actually, most of the big announcements on economy, governance are happening outside the budget in any case. If you look at something like Gati Shakti, the fact that GST now is completely out of the whole budget exercise has taken so much of the power of what a budget used to be. So to that extent, I think it is a budget which just continues and reiterates what the government has been talking about.
So Pranjal, do you think it's a growth budget?
Well, I think it's a continuity budget. It's difficult to say whether it's going to be. I mean, there is a clear focus on growth at a time when the private investment cycle is still struggling. Even though we see a lot of FDI coming in, it's not really getting into ground level projects. Most of it is either brownfield or in the services area. But if you look at manufacturing sector, that's still pending. So the government's commitment to spend more is very, very exciting. Again, the way it does it is going to be the real issue. If you look at defense outlay, for example, Nivedita, the fact that the government has said that we want to ensure that a certain 58% of defense outlay will be on domestic companies alone, rather than trading, which benefits a global company, I think is again a very significant thing. And I think some estimates show that last year as well, they managed to commit about 50% on domestic companies, which is something which is again meant to trigger growth and investment cycle within the country.
Right. On the whole, do you think this capex push, this infrastructure capex push, will that drive India Inc. to invest?
Well, I hope so. See, I think the investment urge is a factor of consumption and demand. That is still very tepid. We see it in pockets, we see it in certain areas. Even the economists are divided about where the consumer demand is going to come from. In my view, consumer demand is a big factor of sentiment. It's psychological. I may have a lot of money, but I will not spend because I fear that my job may not be there in the next few days, or my income as a small businessman may not be there or may fall. So people are holding back and deferring purchases. But at the same time, you have this slightly contradictory trend that there is a huge demand for automobiles. There is there's a backup and a backlog for that, partly because of the shortage. But the fact is that investment cycle will go up only when consumer demand picks up. Until then, government has to bear the burden of making sure that the economy continues to get funds and projects on the ground continue to be well funded.
Moving on from India Inc. to the markets, Puneet, hello, welcome to the show, Puneet.
Thanks, Nivedita.
So how do you think what is the market thinking really after the budget?
Well, actually, as my co-panelists pointed out, the markets were relieved that this is a pro-growth budget. The government has actually walked the talk in terms of where they see growth coming from. Also, the fact that it's not an election budget, as Aditi rightly pointed out. But then a lot of this now is beyond the scope of the budget. So they are partly relieved that there's nothing, there's no negative surprise per se as far as the budget is concerned.
So in terms of investments, what would you suggest? Is it a time to get into the stock market or no? What would your advice be?
Well, it's I wish I could crystal gaze and tell you the future, but then totally depends on your investment horizon. If you think that you're in for the next 6 months, might as well be cautious. But then if you think that you're in for the long haul, say 1 year or 2 years, might as well start nibbling in right now.
Thanks, Puneet. Aditi, I'll come back to you. And of course, you are not a regular market watcher probably, but you know lots about cryptocurrency. We have discussed so many times. So what do you think the government has done on cryptocurrency this budget? It's like taxing, but not making it legal. And it's kind of in no man's land again, or has it got some kind of legitimacy in the budget?
So first of all, we have to analyze where the pressure to regulate stroke ban cryptocurrency was coming from. It was coming from the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, from the Swadeshi Jagran Manch, and both organizations have said that while the decision to regulate or to tax cryptocurrency is good, it's only an incremental step, and the government must act to ban it altogether. It's very difficult for the government to ban it for obvious reasons. There is a thriving market, and younger people, particularly millennials, so-called, are deeply invested in cryptocurrency. There are informal estimates that India is the biggest cryptocurrency trader in the world. So there is a contradiction here. The government has tried to balance a fact of life with something that is post a fact of life, and I guess made its peace with the fact that if you can't stop it, you might as well enjoy it. So that is one part of it. But certainly the other elements of the cryptocurrency trade or regulation, etc., I am not an expert on. I wouldn't know. But there is avid discussion going on among young people now who are big cryptocurrency investors about what to do in the event that there is a total ban. And obviously, this is a strongly political decision. The Prime Minister referred to this to a ban on cryptocurrency and asked for global action on it. Now, you can say that maybe that is an indication that nothing will happen on cryptocurrency until globally there is some move on it. And India is making that an alibi to postpone decision on it. But some decision is clearly going to come. And that element of uncertainty, I think, will be a political negative for this government.
Yeah.
May I come in on this?
Yeah, sure, Puneet.
There is a contra angle to this. 30% tax on cryptocurrencies. Some set of investors actually would be quite happy that the regulation now, to some extent, legitimizes their holding. Paying 30% tax on the profit, as long as they are making money, they won't mind paying that.
Right.
But I think look at it from this perspective. It's being called CBDC, which is central bank's digital currency. The fact is, any form of legal financial instrument has to be regulated and managed by an institution, right? Now, remember, I'll just take you back to a few months ago, even until recently, Facebook was trying very desperately to launch a global cryptocurrency, right? Which means that a private entity was trying to compete with the dollar, yen, rupee, and euros of the world. Now, think of a situation where a private entity were to control that. What would happen to the global financial system? Now, clearly, that's not tenable. And thankfully, Facebook has given up that idea because every single regulator in the world has come up against it now. But regulators realize, and the central banks realize, that this is a phenomena which cannot be wished away. So there is going to be a lot of discussion and debate. They will test waters. And I think what the government of India has done is trying to test the waters and see where things are headed. It has also made it very clear that Reserve Bank of India is going to have a very strong role to play in whatever is going to happen. Blockchain is a platform. Cryptocurrency is one of the use cases and the applications of that. So we have to, of course, separate the two. You're not stopping blockchain, but just saying, well, if there is a digital currency, if there is a cryptocurrency, then how do we ensure that people don't get, lose their money, that financial stability is not impacted? Taxing is one way to for the government to step into the water and see, okay, what's going on. We have heard of anecdotes and stories where individuals are using cryptocurrencies at various transactions within the country, real transactions, not within one cryptocurrency user and another currency user. So government is trying to figure out what's going on. I can't blame them for being cautious, but I think it's an important step towards the fact that it's recognition of a new asset class, it's recognition of a new financial instrument, and hopefully with some time we will get it right. But this is a situation which every central bank in the world faces.
Right, right. And what Aditi was mentioning, I think that is true, that, it's going to be a global consensus kind of a thing that they're looking at, because yesterday also all the bureaucrats we spoke to, even the finance secretary, he kind of indicated that, and he's not really talking of a ban, he's kind of, shrugging it off in some ways. So Pranjal, about technology and startups, what do you think the budget has done, and is there any reason to cheer?
I think the government still has to work on, the kind of taxes and incentives it needs for startups, but that's also a reflection of the bigger picture of ease of doing business. While the government has said they have removed a lot of archaic laws and regulations, which is a good step, it's still not very easy to do business in India. There's still lots of contradictions within the tax administration which need to be figured out. But I think what is important to notice is that many of the services which the government has is moving on digital platforms. And it's very important because effectively what it is doing is removing intermediaries. One of the biggest problems in our country has been intermediaries, brokers, gatekeepers who prevent us from getting direct access. This is the leftover of the license permit Raj. So I'm hoping that this use of technology for various services, from health to other citizen utility services, is going to trigger it. The element for the startup is that they are encouraging startups to work with the government. And it's interesting because, the beating retreat where we had a Delhi-based company create 1,000 drones and a display out of that. To my mind, that was a very interesting milestone, because that company, if you read about it, Bottle Labs is incubated from IIT. It has received orders from the government. Private sector may not give the orders, but typically, if you look at the history of technology, even in the US, some of the biggest American companies, their biggest clients was the government. So government fund seeds these new technologies, and once they reach a certain level, it goes to the larger ecosystem. So I think that trend of government startup collaboration on digital platforms, if done well, will be very important for the general ecosystem.
Right. Thanks, Pranjal. Puneet, since we are talking of technology, I want to ask you, how do you see the IPO rush through this year? Will it be similar to what happened in 2021? How are the techies going to behave, the startup world? Are there any signals from the budget?
Well, they will hit the markets for sure, but then investors will be a lot more cautious given the performance of the recent IPOs.
So will it be crowded in 2022 or no?
I think it will be a spaced out primary market this time around.
I think, Nivedita, Puneet may want to address this. I think the issue of LIC is going to be interesting, what impact it has. At the same time, the market sentiment remains, the markets are down, but remains fairly bullish. I don't know how that's going to play out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, correct. IPO, as the finance minister said, that they are planning this issue in this current fiscal. Obviously, the divestment proceeds for the next fiscal are also set at 65,000 rupees, so which is modest, so to say. IPO, be it LICs or BPCL divestment, is going to suck out some liquidity from the secondary market, which is again going to push investors to the primary market. To that extent, there will be some volatility in the secondary market, but then there are a lot of other moving parts as well that will dictate market direction in the year ahead.
Yeah, that's something to watch out for. Yes. So I have one question for all of you. Do you think it was a capitalist budget, or do you think it was a common man's budget? The opposition has hit out saying that it was a capitalist budget, and the Prime Minister is insisting that it is a...
So let me take a stab at that first, Nivedita. I think it's not capitalism versus common person. It's crony capitalism versus common person. Capitalism by itself is not terrible because of their wealth generation and job creation. Capitalism is most welcome because clearly communism and socialism has not been able to deliver. So to that extent, I am not very keen to accept this binary of capitalism versus, but yes, is this an attack on crony capitalism? It's interesting. If you remember the economic survey, Nivedita, very interesting element in that, which said that the number of cases in NCLT and the IBC codes have actually gone down. And that's because of the fear of IBC. So the cases are not going up because people are now trying to resolve these issues with the bankers. To that extent, I think the policy framework is against crony capitalism, which I support.
Aditi?
I would say that it's not, I don't know if it's capitalist or socialist or what, but one thing is very clear about this budget, that it has, I'm saying this with a sense of trepidation because it's so easily contradictable. But the fact is that it has, like China, not for the first time maybe, but definitely in a very determined way, has shown very global ambitions. I see an element of that from the sovereign green bonds that are going to be created. And, green bonds are very, very crucial because there is a wide ESG finance market out there. And India cannot tap that unless it shows it has very clear credentials on the greening of its economic infrastructure. So I think this is very, very important, and we have to see whether it's going to be genuinely a green push, which will be in tune and maybe ahead of many global actors, many global countries, or it will just be greenwashing, which is a very, prevalent issue. This is not the first time India has launched green bonds. SBI is already in the market. They've done a deal with Luxembourg Stock Exchange to list India's SBI's green bonds in Europe. I think this is going to be a very, very important long-term step in establishing India as a global kind of pivot for finance, for green finance.
Thanks, Aditi. Puneet, do you think the budget is for Aam Aadmi or no?
Well, of course it is. I mean, in terms of whatever it's done in terms of promoting growth and then capital markets. Of course, there's something for everybody here. The salary class, of course, would have asked, wanted some more tax breaks and more leeway in terms of how the tax rules play out. But then take each budget as it comes.
Thank you all for such a lively discussion. We've run out of time completely. Bye for now. See you on Saturday with the next episode of Budget with Business Standard.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.